When this photo of Mars appeared online, people argued about it for weeks because they noticed a structure on the surface that looked too much like something artificial. NASA called it a trick of the light, but the longer you look at this photo, the harder it is to shake off the strange feeling. This is what's really scary about Mars. We've sent dozens of missions there and captured thousands of images with the best technology humanity has. But with every new discovery, there are only more questions. Some photos from Mars are still hard to explain. For example, a photo like the one you see on your screen right now.
We've talked so many times about Mars, about what is hidden on its surface and inside. However, the red planet continues to surprise us. For example, this cluster of craters and lakes looks a lot like an angel. It looks both beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The huge wings stretch for hundreds of kilometers, and the halo could fit a large city inside it. How did this strange pattern appear? Is it just a coincidence? And what else is unusual and frightening on the red planet?
Hubble!
You probably remember the story about something that looked a lot like cutlery being found on Mars. And now the Curiosity rover has a theory about who might have been involved. The thing is, a door in a rock was spotted in one of the photos. Granted, it was about 30 centimeters tall, but that makes us consider the possibility of all sorts of dwarf creatures. However, the fantasies of ordinary people were shattered by harsh reality. Scientists have repeatedly stated that such a door is actually just a typical crack, of which there are many on the rocks of Mars. All sorts of mystical things started being noticed on Mars a little before 1976. That's when pictures were taken of an area in the northern hemisphere of Mars called Cydonia. That would be nothing special, but many people saw a huge human face among the piles of rocks. People believed that it was real. And this belief lasted for quite a long time, until the late 1980s when we got pictures of this area, but from a different angle. And this, well, didn't look like a human face at all. The 1976 photo just showed us an effect of light and shadow. Here we have a second case of how something anomalous on Mars turned out to be nothing more than a product of people's imagination. Why do we have such an overwhelming desire to explain completely ordinary phenomena with something extraordinary or unusual? Why do people see, for example, the image of the Virgin Mary in rain marks on the wall of a house? Let me put it this way. Humans have a truly amazing ability to quickly recognize familiar shapes and images. In ancient times, it was impossible to get by without such a skill. It helped people notice danger in time. Nowadays, let's say, we use this unique ability on little things, like seeing a face in a pile of stones. Our mind involuntarily presents us with familiar images, and we can no longer unsee them in ordinary things. But what if we can't explain all the phenomena on Mars rationally? There must be something, right? Oh, actually, even in our century, plenty of crazy theories have appeared. For example, did you know that there's an entire forest on Mars, and it can actually become denser or thinner? At least that's what the author of A Space Odyssey, Arthur Clarke, believed in, 2001. He came to this conclusion while examining the latest images of the red planet. The writer believed that this forest was a source of food for the Martians. That's right. Later, scientists suggested that the forest was not a forest at all, but rather interesting formations made of dry ice, which in turn is composed of carbon dioxide. Sometimes these formations become denser because the dry ice periodically melts and freezes again. And even 10 years later, the crazy theories didn't stop there. Then a blogger named David Martinez found an entire alpha biostation on Mars. In short, a settlement of unknown beings. Martinez believes that we are seeing the top of a huge underground structure that could serve as a bunker. But here, scientists came up with another theory. Supposedly, the bunker is just a play of light that was captured by the cameras. Some people think that having so many mundane explanations for such unusual things is at the very least strange. But what if the scientists were wrong in all these cases? After all, it's happened before in history. Since the 19th century, scientists have not only considered the possibility that there was once water on Mars. Later, it turned out that the supposed rivers and lakes were just mountain ridges and traces from meteorite impacts. It seemed that the theory had finally become unviable. The scientific community even started calling it the biggest embarrassment. However, as you already know, there was an unexpected twist in all of this. So, we got a picture of this crater and its tail. The crater was most likely caused by a meteorite impact, but the tail is much more interesting. Its structure indicated that water once flowed through it. So, there really was water on Mars at some point, and the astronomers of the 19th century were right. And this unexpected discovery soon helped to find other areas where water might have existed. Moreover, even more interesting details soon came to light. In 2004, the rover Opportunity discovered strange objects the size of small balls. This, once again, sparked a wave of heated discussions. It was later found that these objects are made of hematite, an iron mineral, and such a shape could only form through interaction with water. And that means only one thing. Water was present in this area quite recently. This suggested that traces of specific bacteria could be found in the Martian soil. All kinds of things have happened in the history of Mars exploration. There were even cases when scientists found a strange object of clearly different origin, which later turned out to be a lost fragment of the rover. And we're sure this isn't the end. Mars will give us many more interesting puzzles. Only one thing remains a mystery to us. Will their explanation be rational? And what do you think? Curiosity and Perseverance have become some of the most famous Mars rovers in history, and their missions are still ongoing. Right now, they are 235 million kilometers away from our planet. The rovers are tirelessly working to help humanity gain more information about the red planet. Now, we rarely face the problem of data being delivered too slowly to Earth, and the research probes are almost able to show us what's happening on Mars in real time. We've discussed many interesting discoveries made on the planet before, but today we're inviting you to find out what new things the Curiosity and Perseverance rovers, among others, have discovered for us. Let's start with the achievements of Curiosity and Perseverance. Thanks to them, we've received images of the Geysers crater. Continued. Here we can see traces of sedimentary rocks on the slopes. It's also interesting to take a look at the Belva crater. One of the oldest craters. In some images, we can see areas where most likely water once flowed. And here are images of the Valinor Hills. There are rocks left on them that serve as evidence that there was once a huge sandbar there. The automatic interplanetary station of the European Space Agency, called Mars Express, has provided us with a rather curious image. You can see frost on Olympus volcano. It's not there all the time, but appears for a short period before the sun rises. It should be noted that the frost contains more than 110 million liters of water. Its circulation with the planet's atmosphere happens regularly. Take a look at these icy spots up close. How beautiful this is. The terrain of Mars is much more interesting than it seems at first glance. Here, for example, are cracks that even vaguely resemble honeycombs. Other research devices also get into the frame. For example, here we can see the robotic reconnaissance drone Ingenuity, which completed its mission in 2024 because it damaged one of its parts during operation. The world of the Red Planet is a world full of mysteries, where there are still objects that can surprise us. And it is quite possible that if we ever colonize Mars, this will become a familiar view from the window of a research station for us. And what do you think? Is this possible? Which planet comes to mind first when it comes to colonizing celestial bodies? Whose face immediately comes to mind? Naturally, it's dusty Mars and the legendary Musk. We probably know more about the Red Planet than any of our other neighbors. However, not everything. Recently, the European Space Agency published a photo clearly showing colonies of Martian spiders. It would seem that here is the answer to the question: is there life on Mars? But that's not all the news. Recent studies show that there is water on the Red Planet, but not at all where we expected. So what is mysterious Mars still hiding from us? The planet named after the god of war, the fourth from our parent star, belongs to the terrestrial group of celestial bodies. This means that Mars is made up of solid rocks, and its internal structure is similar to that of Earth. At the center is the core, and there is also a mantle and a crust. The question arises, if Mars is so similar to Earth, why aren't we on Mars yet? Unfortunately, that's where the similarities pretty much end. If you look at it objectively, Mars isn't a very comfortable environment for humans, even in a modern spacesuit. The pressure on its surface is 160 times lower than on Earth, due to its extremely thin atmosphere. The average temperature is minus 63 degrees Celsius, and there are almost always raging dust storms there. Some storms can cover the sky with an impenetrable veil for up to half a year or even longer. In any case, Mars's proximity to Earth has made scientists and futurists think about terraforming and colonizing the planet for years now. Once again, old Elon comes to mind. Terraforming is a long process that can take centuries or even millennia. After all, a number of Mars's physical characteristics would have to be radically changed. Increase atmospheric pressure and temperature levels, and create something like an ozone layer to protect against harsh ultraviolet radiation, and also form a magnetic field and a biosphere for the planet. Just minor details, right? But before apple trees start blooming on Mars, we could at least try to colonize it. The first thing astrobiologists care about is the presence of liquid water. What is it like? The hydrosphere of Mars. What do the latest scientific studies show? Strictly speaking, Mars's water reserves can't really be called a hydrosphere. Due to the low temperatures, the water has long since turned into ice, harder than stone. That's why astrophysicists call it a cryolithosphere. Based on observations that began in the 19th century, it's clear that there is water on Mars, but it's very scarce. Most of it is concentrated in the polar caps. Many people draw analogies with Antarctica, saying that such extreme places are formed according to a similar principle. But in August 2024, the scientific world was rocked by sensational news. Scientists discovered liquid water on Mars for the first time. However, it's not easy to reach. This is truly a breakthrough, because previously all research was focused either on the polar caps or on traces of vapor in the Martian atmosphere. How was this sensation discovered? Since 2018, the Mars InSight lander probe has been operating on Mars. For 4 whole years, it was sort of in hibernation, carefully listening to the voices of the planet and recording the tremors of the crust. It is his research that indicates that at a depth of 10 to 20 kilometers, there is liquid water hidden. Considering the fact that on Earth we were only able to drill a shaft just 12 kilometers deep, after which, for reasons not fully understood, we stopped this activity, hoping for a similar mission on Mars is foolish, at least for now. Was there water on the young surface of Mars? And where did it go? The beds of dried up rivers and the basins of lakes are unambiguous. They subtly suggest that Mars was not always so dry and waterless. Scientists believe that some of the water evaporated along with the atmosphere millions of years ago, but some reserves of life-giving moisture still went underground, similar to our groundwater. The probe discovered deposits of liquid at its location, but that doesn't mean similar things aren't being detected elsewhere. What is the scale of these water reserves? According to astronomers' estimates, the underground water could be enough to cover the entire surface of Mars with an ocean 1.5 kilometers deep and turn it into a Miller planet. Does this mean that if water is hidden underground, then the habitats of Martians could also be located there? The planned colonization of Mars is intended to answer this question as well. A significant advantage is also that the soil of the red planet, although dry, is filled with nutrients for growing plants. Matt Damon even managed to grow a potato crop in his module. Why can't we do it? However, let's get back to Martian water. If the surface of the red planet used to be covered by bodies of water, then they must have affected the geological structure of the celestial body. Simply put, ordinary rocks can tell us a lot about this issue. Let's pay attention to the phyllosilicates that cover much of the surface of Mars. Sheet silicates are formed exclusively from rocks that have been in prolonged contact with water. This fact can also be considered indirect evidence of Mars's watery past. At one time, the Curiosity rover repeatedly sent photos of rocks that were clearly affected by water, and not just any water, but a real turbulent flow. If these studies are combined with the collection of meteorites that have ever fallen to Earth from Mars, particularly Allen Hill's 8401, then thoughts about life on the red planet become more and more distinct. The mentioned meteorite was discovered in Antarctica at the end of December 1984 and was named after the mountains where it was found. When highly magnified, it was discovered that the stone visitor, which left Mars about 15 million years ago, carries the remains of nanobacteria, which we can currently only imagine as being inside a body. Scientists unanimously claim that the meteorite ALH 84001 comes from the era of the so-called wet Mars. But recently, a new name was added to the stone chronicle of the red planet. The fact is that on September 25, 2024, the Perseverance rover discovered something extremely strange. What was it? The rover was aptly named Perseverance because even at a turtle's pace, it has already covered 40 kilometers over the rugged Martian terrain. And all this since 2021. Right now, the rover is inside the Jezero impact crater, which is 49 kilometers in diameter. As the name suggests, the site is believed to be a former lake basin about 2.5 kilometers deep. That's exactly where Perseverance was sent. For 3 years now, the probe has been searching for ancient rocks on the floor and slopes of this crater. And finally, it has found something interesting. It's a rock with an unusual texture resembling a zebra or light marble. It has already been named Freya's Castle, after the Scandinavian goddess of love, a resident of the heavenly city of Asgard. But what's so surprising about it? Isn't it just another boring rock? No, because this 20-centimeter stone is absolutely white. Nothing like it has ever been found anywhere on the surface of Mars. So far, the rover has transmitted rather scant information about the composition of this artifact, but it's clear that the stone is loose and different from the rock typical for this crater. That is, it's quite possible that it was brought here, for example, by a stream of water, or the stone simply rolled here from another part of the planet. In any case, the discovery has sparked increased interest among the astronomical community, so research is ongoing. What is your opinion about the news of spiders on the surface of the red planet? In April 2024, frightening images were published on the ESA website. They were obtained by the TGO and Mars Express probes. The images show entire colonies of giant black spiders, judging by their size and the distance from which the photos were taken. A massive gathering of insects was localized in the city of the Inca, a Martian location that visually resembles the earthly counterpart of an ancient city-state located in the mountains of Peru. This amazing place was once discovered by the Mariner 9 probe. It's absolutely unclear how these geometrically precise linear ridges could have formed. There is a theory that the Martian dunes have petrified over time. Whatever created this location, countless black spiders have gathered here in an area about 86 kilometers in diameter. Setting aside panic, scientists began to study the images and calmed down a bit. It turned out that the resemblance to spiders was purely visual. In reality, these are peculiar geysers caused by climate changes on Mars. In winter, carbon dioxide from the atmosphere partially freezes and accumulates as dry ice. When the spring sunlight, remember the images were taken in late August and April, illuminates these accumulations, the ice begins to melt, turns into gas, and bursts to the surface in the form of fountains. But why are these geysers black? Along with the ice, dark material located beneath the Martian crust comes to the surface. As a result, black spider-like patterns are formed, each up to 1 kilometer in diameter. But looking at these images, it's still impossible to shake the thought that swarms are crawling on the surface of Mars. Lots of disgusting spiders. The red planet is an object of interest that will never fade as long as intelligent human civilization exists. For example, the creation of a transport ship to Mars has been planned for several years now. The launch of Starship has been planned by SpaceX since 2016, but the project is still under development. In 2030, the Chinese are planning to launch their second robotic interplanetary spacecraft, Tianwen-3. One with a similar name is already operating successfully on Mars, and the cherry on top is the crewed flight to the red planet. Since the 1950s, several projects have been developed to send a crewed spacecraft to Mars. Since 2010, the 100-year Starship mission has been in development, which involves sending colonists to the red planet with no return. Why no return? The reason is simple. It's much cheaper this way. After all, the expedition will already cost $750 billion. The landing is planned to take place in locations where human-made craft have already landed successfully. So, what do we have when we sum up all the findings, discoveries, and research related to our rusty neighbor? Mars is often figuratively called the planet of past life, subtly hinting that millions of years ago, rivers flowed on its surface, seas surged, vegetation thrived, and perhaps representatives of an intelligent civilization lived there. Bradbury, in the Martian Chronicles, was not that far from reality. Right now, it's not a very hospitable world for Earthlings. Planet-wide dust storms with wind speeds up to 100 meters per second, no water on the surface, a thin atmosphere, extremely low pressure, and fine-grained soil. In a short time, these conditions would disable any Earth equipment if modules are ever installed on Mars. But still, this is one of the most promising options in our surroundings. We're not going to fly to Jupiter after all. The Hubble channel is taking bets on what the next discovery on Mars will be, and whether a manned mission will head to the red planet anytime soon. Go to the comments